Imagine a country where seawater flows from the tap, where 80% of all water is created by human hands, not taken from rivers and lakes like in other countries. It sounds like science fiction, but this is the reality of modern Israel. Today we will learn how a small country in the middle of the desert solved a problem that stumps entire continents. Subscribe to the channel, it will be interesting. To understand the full scale, you need to go back to the past. Mid-20th century, Jewish settlers arrive on lands where water is catastrophically scarce. The Jordan River, the main source of fresh water, is divided among several countries. Underground aquifers are depleting faster than they are replenished by rain. The situation got worse with each decade. The population grew, the economy developed, agriculture expanded, but there was less and less water. By the early 2000s, the country approached a critical threshold. Reservoirs dropped to their lowest levels in 100 years. Farmers received only 60% of their normal water allocation for irrigation. Crops died. Cities imposed restrictions on water use. People stood in lines for drinking water. Experts predicted catastrophe. It seemed the country faced a problem with no solution. Unlike most countries that have natural freshwater bodies, Israel had only deserts. But Israelis were not going to give up. And then they first thought, why not get fresh water from salty seawater? There was plenty of it, after all. And in the 1960s, scientist Alexander Zarkin developed a revolutionary technology for freezing seawater. The idea was simple. Salt does not freeze at the same temperatures as water. When seawater freezes, the ice turns out fresh, and all the salt remains in the liquid brine. In 1965, the first experimental plant was built on the shore of the Red Sea in Eilat. Seawater was frozen, ice was separated from brine, then melted to produce fresh water. The technology worked, but it had a fatal problem: cost. 1 cubic meter of desalinated water cost $7 to $8. This was incredibly expensive for mass use. The plant operated for only 2 years and closed in 1967. The first attempt failed, but the lesson was learned. More efficient technologies were needed. Meanwhile, other desalination methods were developing worldwide. Thermal methods, such as multi-stage distillation, were used in Persian Gulf countries. They had plenty of cheap oil for heating water. But for Israel, which imports energy resources, this path was not suitable. The breakthrough came with the development of reverse osmosis technology. The principle had been known for a long time. If you take salt water and force it through a special membrane under enormous pressure, the salt remains on one side and clean water passes through. It sounds simple, but implementation required decades of research. The key problem was creating the membranes. A material was needed with microscopic pores that allow water molecules to pass, but hold back salt. The pores had to be about 0.1/10,000th of a micron in size. This is a fantastically small magnitude. To visualize the scale, imagine this picture. If you enlarge a membrane pore to the size of a soccer ball, a salt molecule becomes the size of a basketball, and a water molecule the size of a tennis ball. The difference is tiny, but it is precisely what allows them to be separated. By the 90s, sufficiently strong and efficient membranes made of composite polymers appeared. They withstood high pressure and lasted several years without replacement. This was a technological breakthrough that made reverse osmosis commercially viable. But the problem of energy consumption remained. To force seawater through the membrane required pressure of about 800 to 1,000 pounds per square inch. This is enormous energy. Early installations consumed 6 to 7 kilowatt hours per cubic meter of water. Israeli engineers found a brilliant solution. After passing through the membrane, the concentrated brine was still under high pressure. Previously, it was simply dumped into the sea, wasting energy. The new system used this pressure to push the next portion of seawater through. Energy recovery devices worked like a seesaw. One person goes down, and with their weight pushes another up. Pressurized brine transferred energy to a new portion of water entering the system. Energy losses were radically reduced. Consumption dropped to 2 to 2.5 kilowatt-hours per cubic meter. This was a breakthrough that changed everything. Desalination became not just possible, it became economically viable. By the early 2000s, Israel was ready for large-scale plant construction. All that remained was to make a political decision and find the money. The drought of 2008 to 2009 was a turning point. Lake Kinneret, the main freshwater reservoir, dropped to critical levels. The government realised there could be no more delays. A decision was made to build a network of giant desalination plants along the Mediterranean coast. The first was the plant in Ashkelon. Construction began in 2003. The scale of the project was staggering. Huge pipes stretched from the sea to the plant buildings. Thousands of kilometres of membranes were laid in special modules. The most powerful pumps and pre-treatment systems were installed. Seawater cannot go directly to the membranes. First, it must be cleaned of algae, plankton, sand, and other impurities. To do this, water is passed through mechanical filters, treated with chemicals that prevent bacterial growth and scale formation on the membranes. Imagine a production line hundreds of meters long. At one end, murky saltwater enters from the sea. At the other end, crystal clear fresh water comes out that can be drunk without any additional treatment. Between them, dozens of stages of purification and filtration. The Ashkelon plant started operating in 2005. Its capacity was 120 million cubic meters per year. To visualize this volume, imagine 60,000 Olympic swimming pools filled to the brim. This was enough to supply 1.5 million people. But Ashkelon was only the beginning. The success of the first plant proved the viability of the technology. In 2009, a second giant opened in the city of Hadera. Its capacity was 127 million cubic meters annually. The plant supplied 20% of all the country's water needs. Each new plant was built incorporating the experience of previous ones. Technologies improved, efficiency grew, costs fell. Engineers implemented increasingly advanced energy recovery systems, used new materials for membranes, optimized every stage of the process. And then came 2013. On the shore of the Mediterranean Sea near Tel Aviv, the Sorek plant opened. This was a true technological masterpiece, the largest desalination facility of its type in the world. Its capacity reached 150 million cubic meters per year. Sorek occupied only 10 hectares of land, but this small area concentrated incredible power. The plant used revolutionary 16-inch diameter membranes with vertical arrangement. This allowed more filtering surface to be placed in less area. Water passed through 50,000 membranes, each working with surgical precision. The purity of the resulting water reached 99.7%. This is higher than drinking water standards in many developed countries. But the most amazing thing was the cost. 1 cubic meter of desalinated water cost just 58 cents. This is cheaper than bottled water in a supermarket. For comparison, in the 60s, the cost was $7 to $8. A price drop of more than 10 times in half a century. The economics of desalination changed everything. An Israeli family paid about $30 a month for water. For comparison, Las Vegas residents paid $47, and in Los Angeles, 58. Israel, with its desalinated water, turned out cheaper than American cities with natural sources. By the 2020s, Israel was producing more than 800 million cubic meters of desalinated water annually. This covered all water consumption for the entire population. The country that was dying of thirst now produced more water than it could use. Surplus water was directed to restoring natural sources. Lake Kinneret, which had been shrinking for decades, began to fill. The water level in underground aquifers started to rise. For the first time in many years, nature got a chance to recover. Farmers no longer received limited quotas. Now they could buy as much water as needed for their crops. Water prices for agriculture stabilized. The Negev desert turned into a flourishing garden, thanks to the combination of desalinated water and drip irrigation. But this success story has a flip side. Every day, desalination plants dump millions of cubic meters of concentrated brine into the Mediterranean Sea. This is salt water, with a salt concentration 5 times higher than natural seawater. Brine is heavier than regular water. It sinks to the bottom and spreads along the coast. In discharge zones, water salinity increases, which affects marine life. Fish and other organisms accustomed to normal salinity experience stress or die. Besides salt, brine contains residues of chemicals used in water pre-treatment. Antiscalants that prevent scale formation, chlorine for disinfection, other reagents. All this enters the sea and affects the ecosystem. Scientists are studying the consequences. Some studies show that within a radius of several kilometers from discharge points, biodiversity decreases. Coral reefs, if they are nearby, suffer from increased salinity. Bottom organisms change their composition. Israeli authorities are working on solutions. One idea is building long underwater pipelines that carry brine to greater depth and distribute it over a wide area. This reduces salt concentration at any single point. Another approach is mixing brine with treated wastewater before discharge. Israel recycles 90% of wastewater, a world record. These waters are less salty than brine. Mixing reduces the final salt concentration. There are also more ambitious projects. One of them is the idea of using brine to restore the Dead Sea. This unique lake is shrinking catastrophically fast. The water level drops more than a metre annually. The reason is water withdrawal from the Jordan River, which fed the lake. The project involves building a canal from the Red Sea to the Dead Sea. Along the way, water would be desalinated, and concentrated brine would be directed to the Dead Sea to maintain its level. It sounds fantastic, but technically, it is feasible. The question is cost and political will. Another problem with desalination is energy consumption. Even with modern recovery technologies, plants consume enormous amounts of electricity. Most of this energy in Israel is still produced from fossil fuels. This means carbon dioxide emissions. Israeli engineers are looking for ways to reduce the carbon footprint. One solution is using solar energy. The country has more than 300 sunny days a year. Solar panels on plant roofs and nearby can provide a significant portion of needs. New developments include hybrid systems that combine reverse osmosis with other technologies. For example, forward osmosis using concentration differences, which requires less energy. Research shows the possibility of reducing energy consumption by 40 to 50%. Israeli experience has attracted worldwide attention. California, suffering from chronic droughts, invited Israeli companies to build desalination plants. The largest installation in the Western Hemisphere in the city of Carlsbad was built using Israeli technologies. Persian Gulf countries, Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, Qatar, all of them are investing billions in desalination. Israeli companies share experience and technologies. political disagreements recede in the face of the common problem of water scarcity. Even countries that do not yet experience water shortages are looking at Israeli experience. The climate is changing. Droughts are becoming more frequent and intense. What seems today like a problem of distant, arid regions may tomorrow affect any point on the planet. Interestingly, desalination created unforeseen cultural effects. Israelis got used to saving every drop of water. This was ingrained in the mentality by decades of shortage. Now, when there is enough water, the older generation still continues to conserve out of habit. School children learn that water from the tap is the result of the most complex technological process. They visit desalination plants on field trips, see giant installations, learn how much effort is required for each litre. This forms a responsible attitude toward resources. Desalination also changed the political situation in the region. Previously, water was a source of conflicts. Countries argued over every cubic metre from shared rivers. Israel, Jordan, Palestine, Syria all depended on the same sources. This created constant tension. Now Israel can supply desalinated water to neighbours. In 2020, a deal was signed to supply water to Jordan. This strengthened relations between countries. Water transformed from a source of conflict into a tool for cooperation. Palestinian territories also receive water from Israeli plants. This is a complex topic with political nuances, but the fact remains, technology helps solve humanitarian problems regardless of political disagreements. The economic effect of desalination goes far beyond water supply. Entire industries have grown around the plants. Production of membranes, chemicals, pumps, monitoring systems. Thousands of engineers, technicians, operators found work in this industry. Israeli companies export desalination technologies worldwide. This brings billions of dollars annually. A small country has become a world leader in water technologies. Knowledge and experience have turned into a valuable commodity. Israeli experience shows that the water crisis threatening many regions of the planet is not a death sentence. There are solutions. They require investment, political will, technological innovation. But they work. The country that should have died of thirst now exports water to neighbours. What do you think? Can seawater desalination, following Israel's example, solve the problem of water scarcity in poor countries around the world? Or are different approaches needed? Subscribe to the channel and leave your comment. Let's discuss this together.